Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Hello and welcome to Lost in Science. For another week, we have a half an hour of science ready to go for you. Welcome. My name is Claire, and this week on the show, you see, this summer I've noticed there's been a bit of an increase in the number of different insects and other different animals that I've seen scurrying around. And a lot of people have said this to me. You know, I don't know, Stu, have you seen maybe more crickets or more cicadas or more mice than you normally see, more insects?
I've definitely noticed an increase in rodent activity, but I'm not.
You've seen an increase in rodent activity
about insects, but it does seem, it is summer and there's a lot more flying around in the summer than there is in winter. But I've just put it down to that seasonal difference.
So I thought I would have a look at a couple of specific cases that I've noticed, cicadas and mice, and see what is really going on and what the science can tell us about that. Because we are a science show. We're not just I heard this.
No. We might start with an anecdote, but we really dive deep into the evidence-based side of storytelling.
Yes. And I mean, it isn't going to be the deepest dive, but it is going to be somewhat of a shallow dive, a safety dive. I don't know, whatever you call them. Stu, what do you have for us this week?
Well, last weekend was Valentine's Day, and it got me thinking about flowers because it's such a common gift to give at Valentine's Day, and I feel very sorry for all the florists in Melbourne who didn't get to sell their wares, but it did get me thinking about flowers, and I was thinking about how plants know when to flower, and it actually led me down a path of looking at or thinking about parasitic plants. And
I love how that your brain has gone from Valentine's Day to parasitic plants, like it's no big deal.
Yeah, codependence, parasitism, Valentine's Day, it's all in there. But yeah, I was curious to started looking at flowers, and I went, there's a whole world of weirdness about parasitic plants, which I jumped right into, and went down a rabbit hole, and so I've just found some pretty amazing science about parasitic plants, which is all kind of new as well. So there's a lot of research going on in parasitic plants, which is quite unusual. I'll just be looking at how do these plants survive and how do they deal with their somewhat reduced function as parasites rather than as free-living plants.
Well, I can't wait to hear all about it. Parasites and booming insects and mice. On with the show.
In the world of biology, there are living things that take up every possible niche in the environment, all competing to find enough space and nutrients to reproduce and pass on their genes. And I don't know if you remember a story I did a while back, Claire, about the world's smallest animals.
I do, yes.
Several of which were parasitic animals, meaning they were very much reliant, almost completely in some cases, on a host organism to survive. And part of the reason these creatures could get so small is they have lost some of their abilities and even body parts to shrink themselves down and be more energy efficient and survive on less energy. Now, this is not something that is unique to the animal kingdom, and there are numerous species of parasitic plants that have a similar survival strategy. Now, one of the better-known parasitic plants, which I think probably everyone has heard the name, is related to Christmas traditions in parts of the world. I'm talking about mistletoe.
Oh, mistletoe!
Yeah. It's a plant which grows on other plants. It doesn't produce its own root system. It just taps into the vascular system of another plant and survives that way. Now, the mistletoe that is of all of those Christmas traditions from the Northern Hemisphere is not the same mistletoe as what we get in Australia. They're separate genera. They live in, they're different ancestors in the plant kingdom, but they have similar survival strategies. Now, most of these species, they vary in different parts of the world. They still have leaves and flowers and otherwise have a reasonably normal life cycle, just like other plants. It's just that they happen to tap into the vascular system of another plant and use that plant to get the water and nutrients and sugars in some cases that they need to survive. Now, in the case of a group of plants called dodders, this is what they're called, Doddrs.
Dodders.
Dodders. They don't have any leaves of their own, and this presents an unusual problem for them in a number of ways. One of those ways is in reproduction, because plants basically can tell what time of year it is because of their leaves. So their leaves are photosynthesizing all the time, measuring how long the days and nights are, and all this sort of information gathering that the leaves actually do. So if you've got no leaves, how does a plant know when to flower? So some plants flower as the days get longer. Other plants flower as the days get shorter. Some plants are not fussy at all, and they'll flower once they reach a certain stage of development. It doesn't matter what time of year it is to these other plants. But all of them are triggered to flower by proteins that get produced in the leaves of the plant. So the dodder plants don't have any leaves. They're found all over the world. There's a lot more species in the tropics, just like there is for lots and lots of different other organisms. But there's lots in temperate and cooler areas as well. And they're actually part of the morning glory family, the Convolvulaceae family, which is a family of twining vine-type plants. Now, the dodder plants, as I said, don't produce any leaves or any chlorophyll, which is how other plants synthesize sugar. So they're not green.
What do they look like?
They are like yellow, wiry stems. Yellow or orange in colour. They grow on other plants. They germinate and produce a tiny little root, and then they tap into other plants using these specially adapted organs called haustoria. They tap into the stems of the host plant and absorb sugar and water and nutrients, and basically their root system dies off, and they just sort of grow over the top of these host plants that they feed from.
Whoa.
But, as I said, no leaves to produce the chemicals that trigger flowering. So the dodder plants have no clue when they should produce flowers. They just take hints from the host plant instead. So, in a paper published in August 2020 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, they presented evidence that an Australian dodder species called Cascata australis, uses chemical cues from its host plant to trigger flowering. So they actually put a fluorescent tag on particular proteins in the host plants and tracked them moving from the host plant to the Australian dodder species, and then they could see that they actually had passed from the host plant into the parasite plant.
Are these proteins that are normally related to flowering, or like what?
Yeah.
How do they know? Yeah.
So the plant the protein is called the flowering locus T protein, and it has been recorded as being related to flowering. But what they also noticed was when they're observing the plants, they put the Australian dodder on 3 different kinds of plants that flower at different times, and the dodder adapted to the flowering time of the plant that it was put on top of. So what they were saying is that this suggests why this genus of parasitic plants has been so successful, because it flowers and produces seed at the same time as the host plant is flowering and producing seed. So the little germinating dodder plants can then parasitize the germinating seedlings of the host plant as they emerge, and they continue the cycle for another generation.
That's extremely clever and so well adapted.
Yeah, and this is why these dodder plants are found in every continent all over the world, parasitizing all sorts of plants from alfalfa to wattle trees, potatoes, tomatoes. They cause massive crop losses and failures if they're not kept under control. So it's pretty much, it's a pretty amazing little trick that they've got. But while I was reading about these dodder plants, I found out about another parasitic species called Sapria himalayana, which spends almost its entire life cycle hidden away completely inside the tissue of its host plant. And it only emerges from its host plant when it flowers. So it's basically lost almost all of its original genome, because it doesn't have to grow roots, doesn't have to grow leaves, it just produces flowers.
Does it produce flowers out of the other plants, like the host plant's flowers?
No, it just bursts out of the stems of the plant when it's flowering time.
So it's still like alien.
Yeah.
It's like
it is. It really is like an alien flower just bursting out. And apparently, there's no evidence that it exists until these flowers burst open and emerge from the host plant to attract pollinators. Now, they're not particularly attractive flowers to humans. They smell, and this is yet another reference to horror movies. They smell like rotting flesh. The flowers of this parasite. And they attract flies to fertilize the flowers of this species. So they not only burst out like some sort of horror parasite creature, but the flowers smell like rotting flesh. And, back to my original reason for thinking about these flowering plants, probably not the kind of flowers that you'd choose to give to your Valentine on Valentine's Day.
hey Stu, I was chatting to a friend recently, and they were saying that everyone that they talk to seemed to be seeing a lot of insects and a lot of small animals around at the moment in summer, more than we would have seen in the past couple of years. Have you heard that?
Yeah, and I've got to say, I was driving just after Christmas and in the early New Year, driving around in the country, and I did seem to get quite a lot of splattering on my windshield.
Bit of splattering.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, whether they be splattering on your windshield, washing up on the beach, or deafening you in the bush, people seem to be noticing there's what I guess biologists would call a larger biomass of things alive at the moment, or, a big volume of small creatures that are around. Everything seems to be buzzing, and a bit more than what we have seen in the last couple of years. If you think about it, it sort of makes a lot of sense. We've been in this La Niña cycle. We've just seen a lot of rainfall up and down the East Coast over summer, and these conditions lead to, more plant growth, more water around, which of course animals tend to eat and then reproduce quite quickly. But having said that, this is a science show, not a speculation show. So although that might be a working theory, whether that is actually the case or not needs to be investigated further. Right?
Right. We're not here. Yes. We're not getting lost in speculation.
Lost in speculation. Although sometimes I do enjoy getting lost in speculation. Let's be perfectly honest. So I wanted to do a little bit of investigation, a little bit of research, a little bit of sussing out what the experts are saying about this boom in different animal populations. And wanted to start off with everyone's favourite summer insect. I'm, of course, talking about the cicada, or in Victoria, it's referred to as the cicada.
Yeah, look,
I believe.
I was born in Queensland and raised until I was speaking in Sydney, so I also say cicada.
Yeah. People don't often talk about the difference between New South Wales and Victoria being the cicada line or the cicada line as much as they do about potato cakes and potato scallops, but I think it is quite an interesting inflection. So just to get back to the anecdote for a moment, cicadas, I've been seeing them, they've been super active. All of the East Coast that I've travelled to over the last couple of months, I've heard a lot of cicadas, deafeningly active. And maybe our listeners, maybe yourself, Stu, you've found yourself also struggling to hear anything other than the cicadas in the middle of the day. And according to University of Sydney expert David Emery, cicadas have actually been having a wonderful bumper season, in no small part due to, like I said before, the rainfall that's eased the impacts of the drought and the bushfire. In general, we tend to see the year after a bushfire having a wonderful emergence of cicadas. So that's sort of on trend with what we generally tend to see and what has been reported, and then also what has been studied scientifically.
So that's what would have been predicted, is that we had big bushfires in large parts of the country last year, and then the following year it's usually followed by a bumper emergence of cicadas. Because they grow in the soil for the early stage of their life, right?
That's right. They grow in the soil for many years, I think up to 13 years, and then emerge after that. If I was a cicada, I'd want to emerge on a La Niña year where there's lots of, it's not going to be too hot for me. I'm not going to get burnt. And there's also going to be a lot of food and a lot of other cicadas around, I guess. But what you would have noticed is they are extremely loud. Just to give you some perspective, a normal conversation between humans is around 60 decibels. Some cicada species, such as one of everyone's favourites, the green grocer cicada, which is found along the coast of southeast Australia, it can reach around 120 decibels. So that's the equivalent to standing next to emergency sirens.
Wow.
And also the edge of causing pain and injury to human ears, which is generally around 130 decibels.
It's a good thing they're high up in the trees and not right next to my head, if they could potentially cause injury to my eardrums.
Yeah, but sometimes they sound like they're right next to your head, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the noise is created by their timbal, which is a structure and it works sort of like a drum. So the timbal is a thin membrane and it's stretched across a number of their ribs, or like, you know, the insect equivalent of ribs, and that creates really large chambers, and then the membranes vibrate rapidly through the muscles, or the insect muscles of the cicada, which makes a clicking sound that's then amplified by their hollow abdomen. So that's sort of how that tends to work. It's pretty amazing. And just in case, you know, you are out, you can hear a lot of cicadas around, and you want to contribute to science while you are being deafened at the same time, then you can do that. There is a citizen science project out there. It is called the Great Cicada Blitz. It's online, and you can head over there and contribute the sounds and the location of where the cicadas are from wherever you are, which will go to help scientists better understand what exactly is happening, the volume of cicadas that are calling. So that will give us insights into when they're emerging and in what sort of numbers they're emerging as well.
Can they use that to tell the difference between which species are out, or do they all sound pretty much the same?
That's a good question. I hope so.
Surely there'd be some differences, because otherwise they'd all get confused.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
You'd need to be able to distinguish your own species from some other random species of cicada.
That's right. Just like frogs. So one other booming animal that I noticed as I drove the back roads of New South Wales over the Christmas period was the humble, well, maybe not humble, but quite destructive, just the amount of mice on the road. Yeah, driving at night, there seemed to be, honestly, a mouse dashing across the road every 15 seconds. It was incredible how many mice there were. And it doesn't seem to be just me noticing this mouse boom. There seem to be reports in a lot of Western New South Wales and then all the way up into Queensland, in what is being described in some parts of Western New South Wales as a blanket of mice. The reason for this blanket is because, of course, you guessed it, it's very good feed conditions, and there was a lot of rain, and then the rain eased, and as soon as the rain eased, you've got mice breeding, like, with the best conditions around that there have been for many years.
Can you say mice breeding like rabbits, or is that an inappropriate comparison?
Well, I think mice probably breed quicker than rabbits.
Right.
You see, mice breeding starts at 6 weeks of age, and they can have a litter every 21 days after that. So a pair of mice can give rise to around 500 offspring in just one season.
Wow.
I know.
So rabbits could take a lesson from the mice in that case.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about those 500 then, you know, going on to breed, I mean, it's a pretty steep exponential curve that you end up with. Now, luckily the CSIRO, I mean, obviously mice cause incredible devastation to crops, but the CSIRO gathers scientific evidence every year about potential mice plagues, and can use this information to determine if a plague is around the corner and if it's on the horizon. And with all these reports, they are reporting that there are higher than normal numbers of mice for this time. I haven't seen anywhere that there's been a definite signal that this is turning into a plague, but I think farmers are fairly nervous at the moment. But just like any good model to predict a future outcome, the CSIRO need data. So once again, comes back to citizen science, Stu, as my stories so often do. There is a mouse alert app that you can download, and if you see a lot of mouse activity, if you're a farmer or just someone driving along a deserted back road like me, you can put in the local mouse population hotspot and say where you've seen this increased mouse activity, and then that will go towards helping the CSIRO predict whether there's going to be a future mouse plague. So yeah, citizen science, saving the day once again, hopefully. Yeah, so there you go. With the rain and the temperature, easing and temperate conditions this year, we have seen some really bumper numbers of these, somewhat iconic species like cicadas, but also some hectically destructive species like mice. But with this, it also means, I guess, that other species that rely on mice and insects for food may well be having a bumper summer as well, which, after the year of bushfires that we've had, may be a very good thing indeed. That's all we have time for on another episode of Lost in Science. Thanks for joining us. Lost in Science is recorded on the lands of the Kulin Nation at the studios of 3CR and broadcast across Australia on the Community Radio Network with the kind support of the Community Broadcasting Foundation. If you would like to get in touch with us, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at lostinsight@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, where we are Lost in Science on 3CR, or try us on Twitter, where we are Lost in Science 1, or just tune in again next week, wherever you listen to us, when Stu, Claire and Chris get Lost in Science.
Thanks for listening to a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online.